Today I'm going to try to draw this little hotel in Krakow, Poland. And I'm here in the heart of the old Jewish quarter. And there's a smattering of these kinds of places throughout this area. And I was lucky enough to catch this one on a sunnier day. The past week has been a little bit of a battle trying to find the nice parts of each day. And sometimes it just doesn't happen. So I'm really happy I got this one on a day like today. Having said that, the rest of the day was miserable. Just constant rain. But the second half definitely made up for it. Okay, so for this drawing, my only concern is avoidance. How do I make this not look like a child drew it? What steps should I take to give this some life? I want it to have some depth. I don't want it to look super wooden and juvenile. And there are just a couple of things that might work, but we'll see. One of them I learned from Toby Sketchloose, who I will continue to praise on this channel because I like what he does and he has a lot of great tips. And something he champions is this concept of these flowing, imperfect lines. Obviously, it's not for everything, but it's a technique he seems to employ often, at least in his videos. And it's one I picked up from him early on. It helped me with feeling a touch more confident, which I've severely needed. And it's made some of my drawings that much more palatable. When I was pretty young, my mom always used to say that lines should be perfectly straight unless they're purposely not. I don't think she said it as beautifully and succinctly as I just did, but whatever. Just kidding, Mom. I can't recall the context at this point, but I remember her preaching this bit of advice adamantly, and it stuck with me. However, just because I can commit something to memory doesn't mean that I can apply it. So my lines still to this day are imperfect on accident, and they just scream uncertainty. It's not because I don't try to utilize her suggestion, but because the lines I would prefer to keep straight end up wobbly, and those that I prefer to be purposefully imperfect end up looking accidental. So both my mom and Toby have helped me in theory. The concepts have landed, but I still struggle to implement them in such a way that depicts deliberate line work. So here and throughout this drawing, you'll see that my fears have become realized, that my hotel looks like a child's drawing of their family home, and I'm unsure of what to do with it, unfortunately. One idea that I have, and it's a wild one, is to take my time with the lines. I know, shocking. On one hand, thanks to an Instagram reel I was recently served, I learned that slow, concentrated lines, unless with a ruler, I guess, are less likely to be clean and simple than quick ones. On the other hand, I'm not very good at quick ones, as they usually end up zipping out of the boundaries that I've created for them. So I suppose both options are correct. They're both the answer. And I just need to practice them in tandem, using patient lines for some things and snappy ones for others. Oh man. I've said it before, but I hope my art vocabulary expands along with the drawings. It would be really nice if I could sound less like a moron when I talk about lines. I'm pretty sure snappy isn't the technical term. That being said, however, and I promise to drop this tangent by the end of this sentence, I think this series would maybe be less enjoyable for most of what I assume the audience to be if I went straight into esoteric terms. So maybe snappy is actually the best, most welcoming word for now. Okay, just like I promised, as you can see, I'm still just sketching away at this hotel. And while yes, it is the focal point, the surrounding foliage actually is a significant reason for my choosing it, unlike yesterday. At this point in my drawings, my attention has typically bounced from this to that and back. So I'm happy I'm sticking with it here, but I'm not really content with the outcome. Last night, I was watching a video by Stephen Travers Art, who's so good, by the way. And see, I'm trying to do my homework. And the way he structured this drawing was by building out from one point. He went on to make this stunning drawing of a building in Paris, but it all started with one window with these pillars on its sides, and that one turns into the following 7 that all sit in one long row. And it's not until that point that he moves on to the next element of the building. What starts as a few very simple lines turns into the appearance of a highly detailed drawing, even though none of the specifics are necessarily exact. And he talks about that in his video. I bring Stephen and his video up because I had this method in the back of my mind as I was drawing this hotel, but there were so many things within the process that I just couldn't get right. For one thing, the line work. His was at once incredibly flowing and quick, and I just don't have that in my hand right now. Also, he clearly has a great eye for values, because as he would draw, these darker areas would practically appear on the paper. And clearly, it's because he's aware of that, and he gets it in immediately with the line. He's truly working his way out with all the details. And while it was fantastic and inspiring, putting pen to paper myself today was this rude awakening, and a reminder of just how far I have to go. But given a positive spin, like I preferred to do, it also gave me a direction to orient myself. I loved the way he drew and draws. And as the video went on, he eventually seamlessly included cars, pedestrians. There was even one person on a bicycle that is near the car and starts out in a way that feels impossibly simple. But in a matter of seconds, you see it materialize. It just like takes shape as he's drawing. And that is certainly something for me to strive for. Okay, so now that I've all but completed my hotel, I've begun to sketch in some of that foreground detail, largely consisting of foliage. I've learned a little bit about how I can more easily imply, like I've talked about, some of that bottom bit of the frame. And as for that tree on the left, which is a significant component of the scene for me, I have my final drawing from Tong Young to fall back on. If you haven't seen that video, which you should have, please go back and watch that one. That one is one of the ones I'm most proud of in this series. So yeah, definitely go take a look. But that tree in that video was surprisingly similar to this one. Not at all in reality. They actually look very different. I'm sure they're different types of trees. That tree was much bigger in the video than this one. But in the conceptual direction I'd like to take it, they're similar. So I did hear what I did there, which was loosely drawing in some, I guess, canopies up above to eventually connect to the tree's branches. They start off by looking like clouds. You can see I'm doing it now. But those are actually just broad shapes to imply the, I don't know, foliage up in the trees. There I go again. I need some better botanist vocabulary as well as artistic vocabulary. I think I actually did a better job back in South Korea, like I said, but that tree was the main subject of that drawing. And here I'm kind of just throwing it in as supplemental material. That said, I'd like to find a way to get better at taking my time all the way through a drawing, which sounds so dumb. But I've mentioned before how I'd like to keep these videos at or around 10 minutes. And that's true. It still stands, but I'm curious to see if I could slightly speed up some of the drawing portions if it happens to extend well beyond that time frame. I have done this before. I did it in the pagoda video, also from Tongyeong, South Korea, where the inside of the pagoda was all in shadow. So I shaded all of it, and it took forever. And so I sped that up, at a ridiculous speed. It's like a time lapse. But to mention Stephen Travers once again, that video of his was at 1.5 speed, and he mentions it in his video, and it didn't look much different. If I were to employ a similar tactic, I'd obviously keep the reference video and the voiceover, obviously, at regular speed. Can you imagine 1.5 speed? Just a thought. I'm not committing to it, but maybe I'll experiment a bit in a future video. Let me know what you think about that. Maybe I'll try one, and if it's too jarring, I'll keep them all regular speed and either just, you know, get better at drawing in 10 minutes, which initially was the purpose for the time frame, or deal with just doing longer videos. My one issue with longer videos is voiceovers for 15, 20 minutes is going to be pretty difficult for me, but we'll see. Let me know what you think. Lovely. So here's my little hotel. And honestly, I think I've said what needs to be said. It is a bit juvenile looking, unfortunately. Things look unfinished and a bit random. But worst of all, what was I thinking with that final mark at the bottom? It looks like I was trying to sign it, but it's actually just... My intention was to add more texture for the foliage. It just looked empty there. I don't know. I don't know what happened. I don't know why I did that. Anyway, let me know what you think about the drawing, how you feel about the words, if you like the video, all the above. I appreciate you for taking the time and watching all the way to the end with me so you can hear me say this part right now. I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks.